if your goal is to build muscle and improve your physique, then let's talk about how we do that in a smart manner so that we don't have unforeseen consequences down the road. Now, I'm sure you've seen online a lot of huge guys with a ton of muscle, but at the same time, they lack any amount of athleticism. There are different ways that we can approach building a physique, and they don't all have to do with just strictly getting as big as we can, but we can still preserve our function at the same time. Now, let's imagine two scenarios of weightlifters. On one hand, you can have someone who focuses specifically on isolating a single muscle, overloading that muscle, and then moving on to the next muscle. An example of someone, or a lift that someone like this would do, is a bicep curl. And then on the other hand, we have someone who focuses more on functional movements that involve several muscles and several joints of the body. Something that would load the bicep that's more of a functional movement would be like a row or a pull-up. Now, given these two scenarios, over time, they both will build a lot of muscle. You can either do it one muscle at a time, or you can do it several muscles at the same time. Now, just because they both build muscle does not mean that they're equal in value. I would argue that the functional movement is significantly better than isolating a single muscle. Let's use the example of a knee extension versus a squat. So with a knee extension, the goal is to target the quadricep muscle. With a squat, the quadricep muscle is heavily targeted, but at the same time you get every other muscle in the leg, as well as you include muscles in the core. Now, clearly the squat is better because it involves more muscles, meaning that we can be more efficient at the gym. If you do one muscle at a time, it takes much longer to finish your routine than it would if you did movements that involve several muscles. Now, a heavy set, several heavy sets on the leg extension machine would equal the same amount of time as heavy squats for the same number of sets. But because the squat involves several muscles, we have saved a lot of time at the gym and we were more efficient. Now, the other benefit of that is that when you do a squat or something functional, you go through the full range of motion of the joints. So when you do a squat, it's good for maintaining your ankle flexibility, knee mobility, and hip mobility, versus if you do like the knee extension, that's not really good at any of those other than the knee, and that's assuming you actually bend the knee all the way, which would probably not. Now the question that comes along with that is how much volume should you do? This is actually different for someone who just started lifting versus someone who's been lifting for a long time. Someone who's lifted a long time, their body has made adaptations of the muscles and the bones, the ligaments, the joints and the tendons that helps them to handle the stress of the weight. Versus someone who just started out, they haven't yet made these adaptations, meaning that if they do a lot of volume, they are far more likely to get injured than the other individual who has been lifting for a long time. Now, something we need to talk about is lifting when you're sore. When we're sore, the muscle is literally damaged. Soreness is caused by little tears in the muscle. If you take that muscle and then expose it to even more stress, causing more tearing, you're just going to have a higher likelihood of injury, and you're not really going to build any muscle. So if you're sore, just chill for that day. You don't have to go to the gym every single day. If you do functional movements like we talked about, you will be sore, but in the entire body. Then you wait a couple days and then you do it again. Versus, I know a lot of people like to break up their workouts into leg day and chest day, arm day, back day, whatever day. If you do that, you can go to the gym every day. But in the long term, you're spending far more time to get the same amount of stress on the muscle than if you had just done the functional lifts. Something that people unfortunately avoid, especially if they're focusing more on building muscle, is their cardiovascular health. Now, it's unfortunate because heart disease is the number one killer in the United States, I think in the world as well, but it is very important to do. One of the reasons why people they avoid cardio because they feel like it takes a lot of time. And that's a fair criticism because it does. But if you do the functional lifts like we talked about, which is far more efficient than focusing on the isolated lifting, you will have saved a ton of time that you can then use to work on your cardiovascular health, which I would definitely recommend doing. Now, if you've lifted for a long time, eventually you will hit a point where you kind of plateau, meaning that you can't really build much more muscle mass continuing to do the workouts that you do. Now, this point is a little bit different for everyone, but at that time, that's when people tend to look at using steroids, which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate that social media has it in our mind that the way we look is vastly superior to the way that we feel. All steroids do is make you look better, with the potential complication of causing significant damage long term, especially to the heart. Like we talked about, heart disease is already a problem, and if you add a steroid on top of that, it's just going to cause additional problems, all in the name of vanity. The goal here should be to build a strong physique that is still functional. Now, this is easily done. All we have to do is prioritize the functional movements over the isolated movements. Do your cardio. Make sure you include stretching and mobility. Include things like plyometrics, speed and power training, because those are great for your tendon and bone health. And then I'll give a shout out to working on balance and stability. As we age, that one becomes exponentially more important. If you liked this video, then go ahead and hit that like button. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment down below. Otherwise, if you want to subscribe, my channel is all about how we can build and maintain a functional body that will last all of our life.